Hello everyone and welcome back. Today, let's go over the King's Rest boss guides so that you can be better prepared while running in there and doing these keys. This dungeon is Mythic only, so all of the boss mechanics will apply to Mythic and Mythic Plus. And up first we have the Golden Serpent. Now the non-tank players will occasionally get a debuff called Spit Gold, which is 9 seconds. And after those 9 seconds they are going to drop some gold puddles on the ground, and this dot will be doing damage to them. Now what you want to do for this boss fight is actually drop all of the pools of gold together, because after 3 drops of gold, the boss will actually turn those pools of gold into adds that will then run to the boss and give him a bubble. So once those 3 pools go out, the adds will be summoned and it is your job to nuke the adds as quickly as possible. It is also very important to not let any of these adds reach the boss, so the tank may have to kite a little bit. Another mechanic that this boss has is the Serpentine Gust, which is just a small AoE around the boss. It is going to be doing big damage, so just move out of it. And the Tail Thrash, which is big damage on the tank, which the tank is going to need active mitigation in order to take. Up next, we have Mchimba the Embalmer. Now this Embalmer will target a random person and actually cast Burn Corruption on them. This is going to be a big fire pool on the ground, so just sidestep it and do not stand in it after it goes out. And every now and then this boss will channel on a player a cast called Drain Fluids. This is going to be an 8-second cast, which will be doing a lot of damage, and after this cast the player will get a debuff. This debuff will reduce damage done and actually nerf the player's speed, and can only go away when the player is healed above 90% of their HP, so they need to be healed immediately after the cast. The last and arguably most important mechanic of this boss is that this boss will randomly throw a player into a coffin in the edge of the room. That player must spam their first ability on their keyboard, which will make the coffin shake, and the rest of the players should actually go to this coffin that's shaking and right click it to get the player out. While all of this is happening, the boss will randomly go to other coffins and open them up, summoning one add each time he opens up a different coffin. So if you manage to get to the coffin that has a player quickly, you will get no adds during this boss fight. That's what you should aim for. Up next is the Council of Tribes, which is going to be a 3-boss encounter, and it will change which boss you'll get first from week to week. And one of these bosses is Kula the Butcher. Now Kula will randomly target a player with a 20-second bleed. It's completely unavoidable, just has to be healed through. And the second mechanic with Kula the Butcher is that there will be a small AoE on the ground around the butcher, and once that cast goes out, 2 axes will be spawned, slowly spinning out and out of the arena. You do want to avoid getting hit by the AoE and by the axes, because getting hit by the axes is not only big damage but also a dot that goes on you. So just make sure to move out of where the axes are and then move back in to dodge the axes. The second of the 3 bosses here is Aka Ali. Now what this boss will do is randomly target someone with barrel through, and the boss will charge at that person and deal a large amount of damage. However, that damage will be split by anyone standing in the way. So whenever you do see this go out on a person, make sure that the whole team stacks up between the boss and the person that's getting targeted to split that damage. The other mechanic that this boss does is Debilitating Backhand, which is going to be a big hit and knockback on the tank. But more importantly, this will leave a 10-second debuff on the tank, which will increase damage taken by 200%. So immediately after this backhand goes out, the tank has to kite for 10 seconds before going back in. And the third of the possible bosses here is Xenas All the Wise, arguably one of the more difficult ones. Xenas All will have an interruptible spam cast called Lightning Bolt. If you can interrupt it, then go for it. It'll actually reduce incoming damage. But the important one to note here is Poison Nova. This is a 20-second cast that is a big AoE that can one-shot the group, so make sure you interrupt Poison Nova every single time. And the more difficult ability that Xenas All does have is Call of the Elements, in which this boss will summon 4 different totems, and they need to be nuked down, but in a particular order. The first totem and the most important totem is Explosive Totem. This is going to cast a big AoE explosion, and this needs to be the #1 priority. If this goes off, it can easily be a one-shot. Second on your priority list should be Thundering Totem, which is going to be an AoE interrupt to everybody who's currently spellcasting every 4 seconds. and after those first 2 totems, the remaining 2 totems can be taken out in whatever order you'd like. The first being Torrent Totem, which is going to throw out random AoE bursts on the ground, and they look like this, just avoid standing in them. And the last one is Earthwall Totem, which will cast a bubble on the current active boss in this fight. It is purgeable, or you just have to damage through it, so just make sure that after you take the totem, you either purge or just DPS the bubble off. Now, the important part about this mechanic is that after the first boss goes down, on the second and third boss, the spirits of the previous bosses have a chance of coming out and casting one of their big spells. If you previously defeated Akaali, then you are going to get the barrel through mechanic, so just make sure you stand in between the boss and the person who's being targeted. If you get Kula, you are going to get whirling axes in the middle of the platform. And if you get Xenas All, you are going to get Poison Nova, so just make sure you interrupt that. The last boss in this dungeon is going to be Dazar, the First King. There are 3 abilities that get cast throughout this whole encounter. The first of which is Blade Combo, which is going to be a high damage tank ability, so just make sure you either use a defensive cooldown or active mitigation when that goes out. The second of these abilities is Quaking Leap, which is going to be a leap on a random non-tank player. This will cause AoE damage and will do damage based on how far away you are from the group. So just make sure you get away from the group. This doesn't do an insane amount of damage, so you don't need to worry about being clear across the room. So just get out of the group and make sure you stay out while that goes out on you. The last of the abilities that is consistent throughout the encounter is Gale Slash, in which a tornado will be cast at a random person, and once it reaches that person, it'll then start rotating across the arena and needs to be dodged for the rest of the encounter. If this tornado does hit you, it will apply a big damaging 1-minute dot on you, so make sure you avoid getting hit by it. Now at 80%, Dazar will summon the first of 2 adds. This raptor will be called Reban, and what it'll do is it will actually jump to a player and start casting a frontal swipe. Just nuke this ad as quickly as possible in order to get back to the fight and get back to the main boss. At 60%, Dazar will summon a mount called Tizala. This mount will cast an AoE fear that is unavoidable and uninterruptible, so just make sure you nuke them out as quickly as possible. And a good thing to note here is that any damage done to Dazar during this phase gets transferred over to Tizala, so make sure you cleave as best as you can to double the damage that Tizala will be taking. Now at 40%, Dazar will actually gain a new ability to drop spears from the ceiling in either of 2 different patterns. The first way that he can drop spears from the ceiling is actually clockwise throughout the room, so if you see the pattern start to look like this, slowly start rotating around the room and you will be able to just regular run past these spears. Just make sure you maintain a good pace. And the second pattern is very similar to Cross Ignition in Tol Dagor, in which certain slices of the room are going to become spears and certain slices of the room will not have spears. So just make sure you stand in the part of the room that is clear and don't get hit by these spears and you should be okay. That is going to do it for this dungeon. This is a slightly more difficult dungeon since it is Mythic only. So just make sure you get in there and try your best with this dungeon. If you like my content, like what I do, want to help support the channel, go ahead and visit my Patreon link down below. I also stream every Wednesday and Friday here and on Twitch, so give me a follow on your favorite platform. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, good luck out there.